Guys, back with another video, and now, again, just like the story of Sarah, I'm going to be telling a story. So, here we go. So, there were 3 children, John, Jim, and Johnny. They had their best friend that they all liked. His name was David. David got sick, and he grew sicker and sicker day by day, until finally, David died. Then Jim, John, and Johnny. No, it's not Jim, John, and Johnny. It's Jim, Jack, and Johnny. They went to his funeral, obviously. And when they went, they made one promise. And they said, Death took our friend David, and now we're going to go take Death. So, and across from the funeral lived an old man in a house. The boys knocked on his door. He came down so slowly that it took him a minute and a half just to get to the door. And when he opened the door, Jack, John, and Johnny, is that it? Is that the names? You know, the boys walked in the house without even saying good morning or good evening or whatever. They walked in and sat on his couch without permission. When the old man finally reached the couch in the living room, he sat down with them. The old man looked at them, and the 3 boys looked at him. And then the old man said, "Well?" The boys then said, "Do you know about death, old man, please?" The old man did nothing, except he just nodded his head. And then they said, "We're going to go find Death, and we're gonna go find Death. We're trying to find Death." And the old man nodded his head once again. And then finally, he spoke. He said, "If you go far, far off into the woods, you'll see a very, very, very old oak tree. And when you get there, you will find Death." Now, the 3 boys who got in their Jeep, and they drove off and off and off, and then they finally reached the woods. And then while he was approaching, they went trail after trail, nothing. When they came to the last trail, they saw another very old man walking as fast as he could on his cane, walking pretty fast for what he looked like his age. And then the old man said, "Boys, please let me pass. I'm running from Death." And then the boys said, "No, old man, we're not going to let you pass unless you tell us where Death is." The old man said, "Please, I'm running from Death." He said, and the boys just nodded their head. And then the old man said, "Fine, if you go to that very old oak tree over there," and he pointed behind him, "that's where Death is. Now please let me pass." And being true to their word, the boys let him pass. The boys went to the oak tree. They didn't find Death. They saw nothing. But you know what they did see? They saw $6 million. Now, Jack talked to John, and John talked to Johnny, and they all got into a little mini huddle. And they said, $2 million each. Deal? And they all shook hands on it. And then Jack said, "There's a mall up the street. I'm going to go get us sandwiches." John and Johnny nodded their head and said, "That's a good idea." Jack went off to the mall to buy the sandwiches. John and Johnny looked at each other and said, "We can't let him have $2 million, then only we will have $2 million. Instead, we will have to kill him. We'll have to kill Jack and then bury him here, and then me and you, will get $3 million each." And then Johnny nodded his head yes. That's a splendid idea. And Jack said, while he was at the mall buying sandwiches, he thought to himself, "I don't want $2 million. I want all $6 million. So he thought, and he said, "What could I do to the sandwiches to kill them?" I'll poison them. And then after he bought the sandwiches, when he came back, he distinctly remembered which one was which because they also ordered different sandwiches. He put cyanide and arsenic in John and Johnny's sandwiches, which are not very fun to have. And now, finally, when John and Johnny met up with Jack, without looking, Jack walks over to John and gives him his sandwich. And then when he's looking for Johnny, he's looking around. And then, without knowing, Johnny came up from behind Jack and hit him in the back of the head with a sharp rock. And then they already had the grave prepared, and they tossed Jack in right next to the very old oak tree. While they're burying him, Jack wakes up and he says, "I'll get you back for this," while he's getting buried alive. He screams it over and over and over until finally he was buried alive and was dead. Jack is gone. And then John and Johnny said, "We did just kill a man over money. The least we could do was eat the sandwiches that he brought us." Johnny nodded his head. He said, "Yes, that'd be very, very honorable." In the oak tree, they carved, "Here lies Jack Ringler, 1926 to 1973. And then, after eating it, the boys grew sicker and sicker, just like David, and then they died. And then, in the end, the two old men were right. They found death at the very old oak tree. In the end.